If you're a QB and you want to throw 15 yards farther, watch this video.
Now, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind as a quarterback when trying to throw the football deeper. We cannot sacrifice form, and your hips and your legs play a huge part in the throwing sequence, which will generate more power. And that is what we are going to discuss in this video today. But also, if you are a quarterback and would like to train with us, we are going to be coming out to 15 different cities across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camps. So check out that very first link in the description below if you would like to train with us this offseason, fellas. We are coming out to San Francisco, Miami. Both of those camps are completely sold out. But then we'll be heading out to Las Vegas, Charlotte, Portland, Dallas, Nashville, Chicago, Buffalo, Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Detroit, Boise, and Los Angeles. So again, very first link in that description below, fellas. If you would like to train with us, we'd love to have you out to one of our off-season camps. Let's get started with this video. So first thing I want to talk about here, when you guys are throwing deep, let's say you're trying to throw a deep fade, a deep post, you want to get more distance on the throw. What do you normally do footwork-wise to get some more distance on the throw? You take a hitch. So this is a perfect example of Anthony Richardson doing pretty much a perfect hitch to generate more power on the ball so he could drive this thing downfield. So let's say this, like he's coming off the ball, he's taking like a 5-step drop, and you see at the top of the drop how he's got some weight loaded onto his front foot. This is totally fine if you are going to be taking a hitch. But what we have to focus on doing is when I'm hitching into the throw, this weight that I have onto my front foot, I am trying to shift that weight to my back foot. Now, why is it important to shift your weight to your back foot like so? Because this puts us in a mechanically sound position, and that is what I want to discuss. So, as a quarterback, you have to understand that all of your arm strength, all of your throw velocity does not come from your arm, and it does not come from your upper body. Your upper body is essentially just along for the ride, and it ties more into accuracy. And we're going to talk about that as this video progresses. Your power is going to be generated from your lower body, your legs, your front stride, and your hips. But it's not necessarily just about rotating with your hips and driving off your back leg. It's about the timing of your hip rotation and leg drive in the entire throw. So what do I mean by timing? I mean that when your front foot makes contact with the ground, I don't want all of this weight that was on your back leg pushing forward to the front foot. I don't want you pushing off of your back foot. I want you rotating at your hips. We are rotational athletes as quarterbacks, and that is where your power is going to come from. And we cannot rotate properly unless I get my weight back, which is where we come into play with this hitch that I was talking about. So like I said, let's rewind. So you see how he's here, weight on the front foot. Let's say, for example, Richardson just decides to throw and he leaves all of his body weight forward. To generate power as a quarterback, it's all about having a correct throwing sequence and the right timing of your throwing sequence. So the throwing sequence has 4 specific parts. First part is going to be your base. You want to make sure that you have 70% of your weight on your back leg, and you want to make sure that your back foot is underneath your shoulders. You do not want a really wide stance, because when your feet are very wide, it's physically impossible to rotate with your hips effectively. And I'll explain that as this video goes on. So first part is the base. Second part is you want a short stride. And when you take that short stride, you want to take the football back and slightly rotate your front shoulder. You want to be able to separate your lower body from your upper body, right? That's the second part. Third part is the hip rotation. That means that the hips are firing through after that front foot's in the ground. Not at the same time. Front foot's in the ground, then the hips fire through. And then because you went back with your shoulders in the football, the fourth part is the ball coming through. But the back hip has to fire through before the ball, creating a whip that creates something called torque, and that is how I get more distance on my throws. So all of that is impossible if Richardson throws from this specific base. If his weight is shifted forward, if his back foot is wide, the first part of the throwing sequence is always the same as base. But if his base is flawed, the second part's flawed, the third part's flawed, and the fourth part is flawed. Let me explain. So if he goes to throw and he leaves all of that body weight right here, when he decides to take a step to the target, and this is something that a lot of young quarterbacks struggle with, when he takes a step to the target, guess what's going to happen? All of his body weight is already transferred through. So when your weight is shifted forward like so in this example, it makes it impossible to rotate your shoulder and take the football back. So why is that a problem? There's no separation between hips and between shoulders. Quarterbacks generate power the exact same way a baseball hitter would generate power. You're standing in the batter's box, you have the bat loaded, pitcher throws a pitch, you take a step to the pitcher, what does the bat do? The bat stays there. Then you pivot, you squish the bat bug, and the bat comes through after you pivot off of your back foot, creating bat speed, which is how we get more distance on the hit, right? Distance on the ball, I mean. Same thing with throwing a football. You generate power the exact same way. It's all about separating the upper body from the lower body. Now, if your weight is forward, you go to take a step, your shoulders are coming forward, the ball doesn't go back as far, and then your elbow and your shoulder fire through the motion before your back hip and before your back leg can drive you through, essentially making you throw all arm because we didn't have any separation. I have to get separation. So that is why this hitch is so important. Whether you're throwing a deep comeback, whether you're throwing a deep post and trying to let it go and you want to add 10 to 15 yards more on the deep post, you have to switch your feet and get your weight loaded. And when you do this, it's got to be violent. It's got to be aggressive. You got to almost take your right foot and replace where your left foot is in this case, right? So he's here. See how he replaces, and he shifts his weight back. Now he's got about 70% loaded onto his back leg. This is the mechanically sound base that we are looking for. Now, is it always done off of a hitch? No, you could throw it from the pocket. You could need to do this on quick game. You need to do this when you're moving in the pocket. In this next example of Anthony Richardson is how we're going to show this. Guys, I'm telling you this right now. I know he's unproven in the NFL, but if you're looking for a motion to study, Anthony Richardson's is pretty much perfect. When it comes down to timing, hip rotation, base, stride, he is one of the most pure throwers of the football in the NFL. So he shifts his weight back like this. What does that allow him to do? That allows him to rotate his shoulders back, right? So look what happens now. What's the first part of the sequence? Base. He's got the perfect base. 70% back foot is underneath his shoulder frame. What's the next part? A stride. Now, this is where a lot of quarterbacks go wrong. They get to this base, but what they do is they push off of their back foot, and what happens is that all that weight they had loaded back goes forward all at once. So when all your body weight goes forward like this, and then your front stride makes contact with the ground, even if it's a short stride, guess what you can't do with your shoulders? You can't separate them from the lower body. All your body weight is pushing forward all at once. So the stride has to be separate from the back leg drive, the weight transfer, and the hip rotation. You almost want to think of it like this side of your body over here. His left side is totally separate from his right side. You want to stay loaded on your back leg and keep that foot under your frame when that foot makes contact. Think that your left foot is punching the ground. You're trying to punch the ground as quick as you can with your big toe. So you see when he strikes the ground, it's short. It's in place almost. And because he maintained his weight on his back leg, what can his shoulders do? Separate. So now his shoulders are back, front stride is down. What needs to fire through next? Hips. So guess what happens? His front hip, I tell my quarterbacks this all the time. Pretend like somebody's got their hand on the band of your shorts, like on the left side of your body, and they're pulling you open. Rip open that front hip, because when you rip open that front hip like so, that back hip will drive through. That's personally what I think. Some people might think I'm going to rotate with my back hip, and that's totally fine. That's just personally what I think. So now guess what? His feet are underneath his frame. His back hip is firing through. Elbow, shoulder, and football are all behind his back hip. That is the magic position. That is how you generate more power, and that is how you get more torque on the ball. And he could do this while he's getting hit, but it all started with his hitch. And that hitch having some quickness generates momentum. That momentum generates more distance on the ball. But you got to make sure that you have that momentum leading into a mechanically sound position. So I'm going to show this full speed one more time so you guys can see it. And then we're going to talk about just a basic throw from the pocket. No hitches, how your base should look, and how it applies even when you're moving in the pocket. So you see that? That's guys, that's as good as it gets. If you're looking to add distance to your deep ball and you're taking a 3-step drop and a hitch, 5-step drop and a hitch, shuffle and a hitch, that is how it should look. That is exactly what every single quarterback coach in my mind should be teaching, because that is what all the best do. You look at Anthony Richardson. I know he's unproven in the NFL. Compare him to Aaron Rodgers. Compare him to Patrick Mahomes on a deep ball. Compare him to Brady when Brady played. All those guys hitch up, get their base, the stride, the sequence, the exact same way. They're all different body types. They all throw it differently. But there are key things that they do to generate power on the ball, and that is what we were trying to showcase to you. So now, let's look at this example here from Anthony Richardson. Just moving in the pocket, takes a couple drifts back, and then just throws a dart, like 40, 50 yards downfield, just on a rope, right? That takes a tremendous amount of arm strength. So how is he able to do this, right? And yes, I understand that he's a big dude. Watch shorter guys in the NFL. Watch Kyler Murray. That guy's not a big guy. He weighs a lot, right? But he's not the big. Watch his mechanics. Bryce Young. Watch his. I know he doesn't have this monster arm, but he's still able to make NFL type throws, and he played at the highest possible level of college football. You need to have arm strength to do that. Look at their mechanics, look at their base, try to compare and contrast similarities and differences, right? The differences you'll find is they hold the ball different, they take the ball back different. The similarities you're going to find is base, front stride, hips, and shoulder timing. It's all about timing of the stuff that we talked about. So let's look at Richardson's base here. He's moving. Where's his back foot? 70% underneath his back shoulder. Pretty good start, right? So that's the first part of the sequence. What's next? Front stride. So his front stride gets down, and since he maintains some weight onto this back leg, what is he able to do? Have the shoulders rotate back, so he's got that separation. When those hips fire through before the shoulders do, that creates a whip, guys. And that whip is the power that we're looking for. So you see how he's here. He strikes the ground. It's a short stride. It's not a long stride. He's not pushing. Not everything is going forward all at once because we need to get that separation. I don't get that separation if my stride and back leg drive, weight transfer are all the same. I need it to be separate. So front stride goes down. His shoulders go back. What needs to happen next? Back hip needs to fire through. So you see how his hip's coming through. Where's the football? Where's the shoulder? Everything's behind his hip. Guys, remember, it all starts with your base. You want to add more distance to the ball? Focus on those 4 key mechanical sequences. Focus on your base, 70% back foot under your frame. That's the first part. Second thing, you are trying to punch the ground with your front stride. As you punch the ground, you are separating your shoulders. Shoulders are separate from your hips. You're rotating back. Third part, front hip is firing open. Fourth part, football and arm sling on through with tons of velocity, tons of torque, and tons of whip. That is where I get power, you guys. Now, when we're trying to drive the ball deep downfield, you see how Richardson has a slight arc of his shoulder? That is also going to help you guys put some more distance on the ball. But guess what? If your body weight is forward, like let's say he's got 60 to 70% of weight on his front side, it's impossible to arc your shoulder. You guys could try it right now. Put weight on your front side and try to arc your shoulder. It's incredibly awkward. When you have weight loaded onto your back leg, you can arc your shoulder all day long and change up levels on the throw because you're using more of your lower half. Your feet are inside your frame. So guys, that is the recipe if you want to add distance on your deep ball. I know a lot of you guys maybe get capped out at a certain distance too. I would highly recommend listening to some of the things in these videos because all the top-level passers have those things in common. You can't find me one guy that doesn't have, I say this, they throw differently, but doesn't have the hip timing, the front stride, the base in common. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate. Leave those in the comment section below. Always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like to train with us in 15 different cities this offseason, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out to one of our off-season training camps, all the way from Las Vegas, Atlanta, Detroit, all over, fellas. Very first link in that description below. I'll see you guys next time.